A lithium-ion battery company named DCS is suing a small YouTuber named Stephan for defamation because it seems DCS simply did not like Mr. Fisher's review of its batteries. Entertainingly, personal opinion, this seems to be blowing up in their faces monumentally in the most hilarious and high-profile way. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Code. Now, today's shirt, before anyone asks, boxing is easy. Brought to you by pugilism, obviously. Said no one ever. And look, if you're working on your left hook, I feel your pain, dude. I've been doing that for 25 years, and occasionally I feel as if I'm almost there with it. The long-range one, much more challenging than up close and personal, don't you think? And if you are motivated in the comments, let me know your preference. Knuckles vertical or horizontal? The correct answer there, I fear, probably not what anyone really thinks. So, where are we? What are we doing today? This is the curse of getting older, of course. Ah, yes. This report is my honest personal opinion. Let us not forget that. I've already covered the basic story, of course, and I'll put a link to my original video on this in the description, and also a link to Stephan Fisher's YouTube channel, which is called All Off-Road Adventures, All Off-Road 4x4 Adventures TV. Get it right. He's gained quite a few subs recently from this hashtag, silver lining, albeit a small one. And I think his GoFundMe is helping substantially with his legal defense also. So that's vestigially uplifting, I suppose. High-profile American YouTuber Louis Rossmann had a hilarious swipe at DCS following their action against Mr. Fisher, and Mr. Rossmann's first video on that has garnered an incredible 856,000 views, which has to be, I don't know, 10 or 20 times more people now aware of DCS and its hyper-litigious mindset and conduct than ever watched Mr. Fisher's allegedly defamatory videos in the first fucking place, which all seemed pretty tame to me, frankly, as far as reviews go. Mr. Rossmann has posted a follow-up, which is almost guaranteed to invoke in-trouser urination. At least that's how things worked out for me. That happened just a few days ago, 1 or 2, depending on when I cut and post this, with another 137,000 uplifting views. So, in total, that's more than 1 million people. Keyword people. These things, after all, are not abstract views, are they? They're people watching, like consumers, people with newfound battery brand awareness. Go figure. 1 million views across 2 episodes and counting, which would of course be a smash hit on crappy network TV here in Australia. Certainly high profile exposure, and Mr. Rossmann does not hold back. He makes me look like a shrinking fucking violet, dude. He's awesome. Hashtag respect. Defamation laws exist so that if, for example, Channel 7 broadcasts your photo and happens to allege that you are a rapist, it's just a hypothetical, you can sue them because this kind of thing would conceivably put a serious dent in your reputation. It might easily affect, I don't know, your personal relationships and or your employment. However, if it's true, and they can prove it because you were just convicted of that heinous crime, it's certainly still defamatory, but they can defend it because truth is a defence. Legally, they call it justification. Defamation laws, however, do not exist to allow someone to have a frickin' tantrum and ruin you because you hurt their fucking feelings by painting them or their shitty product in a less than glamorous light. And I'm not talking specifically about DCS or saying they're doing that. They might be, but I don't know. It might even be likely, but I would prefer not to speculate on that. restaurant reviewers, for example, are allowed to claim that the Sunday roast tasted like turd because that's a fairly subjective determination, and honest opinion is also a defence. And dude, how would they really know anyway? Like, when was the last time one of them actually ate turd? People defame me every day in the comments, so I've got pretty thick skin about that. And my advice to anyone mid-tantrum over not liking what somebody else says about them would be, harden the fuck up, dude, unless it really is life-altering stuff. The point with the DCS thing is, suing someone for defamation is certainly not without risk. The risk of negative exposure and the risk of amplification of the issue. Hundreds of thousands of people might decide that you're a cock, whatever. And it seems to me that this kind of broadly is the sort of feedback loop that jumped up and bit DCS on the buttocks over this. Someone in legal studies at a prestigious university should jump on this, because it is a hugely fascinating window into what can happen if you sue someone and it goes badly for you. It's easy to unwittingly shoot yourself in the scrotum if it's some sort of tantrum-based thing, and particularly if there are skeletons you would rather not have unearthed deep in your closet. Last time I checked, DCS's Facebook is shut down. Their website's been crashing on and off periodically, like it might be groaning under the strain of people reaching out to them, heaven forbid. It's likely that they are drowning under a torrent of negative feedback. If you choose to contact them, that's okay, but please be polite. By all means, let them know that this has affected you and in what way it's affected you. Just don't be an asshole, and don't open yourself up to any sort of retribution, right? Mr. Rossmann's research team is apparently humming along like a well-oiled machine, I must say. He really does seem to have taken exception to DCS's conduct towards Mr. Fisher. I find this fascinating, and hey, you might too. See, Mr. Fisher's main negative comment on DCS's batteries, which he tested under the bonnet of his Land Cruiser for knows how many visits to Dingo Piss Creek, cultural icon here in Australia, if you're not from around here. His issue appears to be that he alleges they lost, relatively speaking, a lot of storage capacity over the time that he tested them. Personally, I don't understand how you can defame a product. It seems to me you should be able to call a hairbrush a murderer without justification, or criticise somebody's hair. Like, it's difficult to defame somebody's hair, I would have thought. Anyway, the sentence for this kind of thing, calling a hairbrush a murderer, should simply be stronger medication or more foil in your hat, perhaps. But then, the law is complex, and I never had a burning desire to wear a stupid fucking wig from the 16th century and waste my life in a courtroom with other people hell-bent on debating esoteric bullshit. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Anywho, one of the almost certainly unintended consequences of firing this broadside into Mr. Fisher is that Louis Rossmann's research team has just unearthed this highly technical battery test report, which I will also link to in the description for your entertainment and edification. Dude, if I was running DCS, not that I would covet that job right about now, but if I were, I would really not want anyone to unearth I would want it buried so deep in the Mariana Trench for the rest of eternity, with the words, "Do not resuscitate," carved deep in its titanium sarcophagus. It was funded by ARENA, which is kind of a growth on the federal government's anus, known as the Shitsvillian Renewable Energy Agency. This is the game they're in. ARENA paid a company called ITP Renewables $1.29 million of our money to test batteries independently. Big batteries, in this case, the kind that go on houses to support solar and inverter installations. ITP Renewables is drowning in PhDs, I presume, the kinds of dudes and dudettes who think that doing linear regression is just as entertaining as the way you and I think of waiting with bated breath for a medium-class stripper to erupt enthusiastically from a cake on our birthdays. This is not an exaggeration. Like, dude, I went to university with people just like that. They loved numerical analysis in exactly this way. And I was always more of a stripper cake outcast. I was so lonely. ITP's PhD stripper cake number crunchers have put dozens of big batteries through thousands of test cycles in their climate-controlled, purpose-built battery test facility. They do this in an extremely robust, scientifically precise way, which to them is like going to work extracting strippers from cakes and repackaging them day in and day out. Who wouldn't want that job? In total, they've done 6 years of testing on batteries, and they've published the results every 6 months for accountability. Mainly, they did this because, according to them, there is a disconnect between communications from manufacturers and distributors and ITP's experiences on product capability, particularly integration and compatibility. So, overblown claims in the brochure, and also, the amount of time required for managing maintenance issues during operation was significantly underestimated, and the level of support received from manufacturers varied widely. Okay, so longevity and support. This is pretty valuable stuff to know because home batteries are certainly not cheap, and if battery A loses 40% of its capacity after just 1,000 cycles, while battery B is still humming along at 95% capacity after 4,000 or 5,000 cycles, I know which one I'd prefer to own, i.e. the one not predisposed to defecating in its trousers in early middle age. Fortuitously, ITP has tested a DCS battery, and I stress that this is a completely different battery to the battery Mr. Fisher reviewed and which is the subject of his defamation case. The cells might be similar or not, I simply do not know. ITP tested a DCS PV 10.0, which is a notional 10 kilowatt hour lithium iron phosphate battery for home installation. It's the kind of thing that goes with a photovoltaic array and an inverter. They tested it alongside 7 other batteries in this round of testing. The batteries were from BYD, Solax, Sonnen, Firma, Zenergy, FZ Sonic and Power Plus. And this was the 3rd round of similar battery tests, so ITP is match fit for this, having tested a total of 14 batteries in this genre. Now, this graph, which is quite interesting, shows the state of health of each battery in the 3rd round of ITP's testing. That is, how much capacity each battery lost against the number of charge and discharge cycles on the horizontal axis there. DCS is the green line, the one on the trajectory that you never want a 787 to be on if you're in it midway over the Pacific Ocean. It seems to me a spectacularly poor performance comparatively, meaning compared with every other battery in that round of testing. That seems like an uncontroversial determination based on that test. For those of you who only thought about boobies during science classes, what the testing dudes are actually doing here is charging and discharging the batteries in a scientifically controlled way hundreds of times and modelling the results to project how many cycles each battery is going to take to lose 40% of its initial capacity. The firmer battery, for example, in that aqua colour, is looking pretty good. It's heading for 40% capacity loss over 5,225 cycles. So if you cycle it once a day, that's about 14 years. In similar tests earlier, a BYD battery was on track for the same result in 5,640 cycles, which is roughly 15 and a half years if you do it every day. LG Chem, 3,360 cycles, which is roughly 9 years. Tesla Powerwall 2, 4,885 cycles, roughly 13 years. This is valuable information, right, if you're in the market. But not all the batteries could be modelled in this way, okay? And ITP is quite crystal about that too. One, for example, copped a firmware upgrade that increased its capacity, and many others just remained kind of constant and did not show a discernible trend during the testing. DCS was very poor, comparatively. This is the green one on the steep trajectory, right? And this is not my opinion. It's a fact based on trustworthy independent data. Taxpayer-funded, publicly released, and therefore widely scrutinised. Like, if you were to show battery buyers this graph and then explain to the dumber ones what it actually represents, how many would front up and still buy the DCS battery? Like, in a rational world, no one. Again, these are not the same batteries as tested by Mr. Fisher, but the loss of capacity noted by ITP is comparatively profound. Recently, ITP noted a rapid decline in the battery capacity and reached out to DCS. They have requested the battery to be sent back to their factory in southeast Queensland for analysis. That statement is from page 13 of the ITP report, and I couldn't find any update on that. With many other batteries seemingly on track to retain 60% capacity for 10 plus years, if cycled daily, the DCS battery, according to ITP, was on track to lose 40% of its capacity after only roughly 1,195 cycles, or 3 years and 3 months approximately, if cycled daily. Your mileage may, of course, vary depending on the temperature, the nature of the cycling, which inverter you connect it to, etc. But the point of these tests appears to be that they are controlled, right? Meaning you're supposed to compare the results. That's what experimental control achieves, after all. That's the entire point of having experimental control. And this was done in a very robust way by a respected bunch of people who lack the stripper cake appreciation gene, and they have no apparent axe to grind. It's very different, in other words, to amateur in-field testing of batteries under the bonnet of some freaking random Land Cruiser. It could easily be more than just coincidental, however, that both Mr. Fisher and ITP noted a similar, seemingly premature capacity loss by the same battery manufacturer. That's worthy of consideration, at least to me. Like, do further investigation, whatever, but it is something of a red flag to me, personal opinion. Manufacturers of everything, after all, have internal standards, and it may be that the core cells for both products, the house battery and the under-bonnet battery, are designed in a very similar way. They might well have come off the one production line in China and just be assembled differently. I'm sure Occam and his razor would approve of this type of hypothesis. Let us not forget that the ITP thing here was a multi-year test, paid for by the taxpayer, sanctioned by a government department, made public every 6 months and therefore subject to scrutiny, conducted by a highly respected engineering consultancy in a state-of-the-art climate-controlled facility by people who think a spreadsheet full of battery state of health results is better than having a few beers culminating in the birth of a stripper who's been gestating in a cake. It's pretty hard to argue with that kind of academic dedication. What continues to amaze me here is that, in my opinion at least, DCS invoking this sanction against Mr. Fisher has become one of the most significant anti-marketing campaigns that I can remember. To me, this is what an epic own goal actually looks like. I might, of course, be wrong, and it's just my opinion. Without DCS pulling this pin and hurling this grenade, however, Mr. Rossmann would doubtless be focused elsewhere, and ITP's reputation-critical stripper cake spreadsheet substitute report would have remained buried beneath a million layers of online obscurity. So, way to shoot yourselves in the fucking foot. Personal opinion.